guys, welcome to another DM Drive. I wanted to talk to you guys today about opposing dice rolls. Opposing dice rolls are one of the very simple ways that, regardless of what game you're playing, you can resolve very fast actions. So one of the best things about role-playing games is that when we use the dice, using the dice allows us to determine the outcome of sort of random encounters or actions or skills that we are trying to do. A lot of advice that people give to game masters and players in role-playing games is to not have players make rolls if it's not needed. And for the most part, I agree with that. But sometimes you just want to be able to add a random element into the game to see whether or not the players are actually succeeding in the task or the role or what they're trying to accomplish. And I think that the best way to do that actually is by an opposing dice roll. Now, there's two ways to do this, right? First, of course, is that you have the player roll a set of dice, and then you have the game master roll a set of dice, or a die, or whatever the game system that you're using uses. And whoever gets the better roll, and of course that depends on the game that you're playing, whoever rolls higher, whoever rolls lower, is the person who succeeds or gets the decision made that things work out in their favor. So, for example, if I am throwing a punch at somebody and another character, let's say they're both player characters, wants to block that, I have them make opposing die rolls. Whoever gets the success, they are successful. One person maybe blocks it, and then the other person, of course, would make the punch, right? This does not need to be combat. I just used a very simple example. Of course, if there's a tie, you simply re-roll. That makes it easy, quite frankly, right? So if you're not sure exactly who won, comes up with the same set of dice, you re-roll to see who does it. To me, that tension of the re-roll actually adds a lot to the game, because sometimes people will get 2 or 3 tied numbers, especially if you're playing a game that has sort of a bell curve in the numbers. For instance, in the game that we play, it's a 2d6 system, and so the odds of rolling a number 7 are higher than any other number, which means that the odds are actually in your favor that you'll get a middle of the curve roll. And that means that there's a number of ties that happen, and then you re-roll. So when those ties happen, a game master can play to the tension that's in the space in that part of the game, right? I use the example of somebody punching somebody. One person punches, the other tries to block. Neither of those go through. The person doesn't block the punch, but neither does the punch connect. And it's a case where maybe both are jockeying for position. So having a game master describe that in a set of opposing dice rolls, I think is actually a great way to build tension what's going to happen, right? I particularly see this as being useful when players are, playing pranks on each other. Usually, you don't really want to have inter-party conflict within a game, because that kind of drives wedges in between the players and the player groups. But sometimes having like inside jokes and fun within a game, somebody trying to play a practical joke on another character in game is a great way to adjudicate this. That said, this is especially important for major or important non-player characters. So a game master who uses opposing dice rolls to determine whether or not somebody is correct is a great way to determine whether or not an NPC does well, or I might use the word survives or gets their way, right? So there's a lot to really consider there, to be honest. I talked about there being 2 ways, right? And some people might argue that the second way that I'm going to talk about here isn't really an opposing dice roll. And that's for the game master to just set a number that they're targeting, right? And of course, it's not an opposing dice roll because there's not a second die roll, but to just say, hey, arbitrarily roll 8 or less. If you roll an 8 or less, you will succeed in this task. And it could be a very simple task. Hey, I'm going to go over, pick up that chair and move it to the side of the room. Now, the game master might realize that the chair is really heavy, right? So they might go, well, make a dice roll, right? 7 or less. And then they make that roll. Or it might be like, make a die roll, 16 or more to carry that chair. And be like, why would the game master be making me roll a 16 or more on a d20 to succeed in moving a chair? And that's because there could be something special about the chair. In a way, that opposing die roll or that roll is a hint to the players that there is a plot point or something going on. For instance, that chair may be pointed, or I'm sorry, that chair could be painted to look like it's a wicker chair, but in reality it's made out of melted gold and painted to look like a wicker chair. So maybe somebody's hiding their treasure in plain sight, and in their room, somebody who's really rich has a wicker chair and it looks like they don't have like a lot of money, but in reality, they've painted their gold chair. And when the person walks up and makes that roll, yeah, they might be able to move the chair, but they suddenly discover something or learn something. That chair is super heavy, or there's something in the bottom of the chair, which is maybe where they store the gold coins or something like that, right? So opposing dice rolls or dice rolls against target numbers, I think, really work in games to allow people to know stuff. There's a couple roles that are particularly fun in the Doctor Who role-playing game that we play. In the TV show Doctor Who, the mental connection between a Time Lord and the TARDIS and the companions in the TARDIS allows people to understand different languages. So in our game, for example, we had a die roll where players asked if they could understand what an animal was saying. In one particular case that I can think of, somebody wanted to know if they could understand what another penguin non-player character was doing. And the player made that roll. They rolled a critical success. So sure enough, in that game, because we sort of had this opposing die roll situation, discovered that one of the characters actually understands Pengletongue, which is what we called it, but understands the language of penguins. And that ended up being this amazingly fun and humorous part of the game. And very often our players now ask for an opposing die roll if they encounter an unknown species, or if they encounter sort of like a strange monster or race. They will then ask, hey, is there a chance that maybe I understand what they're saying? That's a perfect example of when you could use an opposing die roll. The game master rolls, they roll, and then you can say, yeah, you understand this. Or you set a target number and you just have the players arbitrarily roll to see whether or not they succeed at a basic task or something that's unknown in the game, right? Really what we're talking about is using randomization, the randomization of the dice, to help tell the story and move forward the plot. For things that, a game master could just arbitrarily make that decision, that's okay. But allowing the world to evolve, or having situations in which we just discover things, that's a great way to make a roll. Another thing that I personally do a lot is sometimes when people are doing mundane tasks, I will have them make a roll. And people might be like, why is that? And that's because if you have somebody make a roll, it can actually lead to a lot of drama or a lot of comedy in the game. And sometimes I'll just say, make a roll, but just don't critically fumble or critically fail, right? And inevitably, maybe one every 8 games or 10 games or something like that, I will have an arbitrary roll like that, and a player will roll and they will critically fail or critically succeed at a task. And when those moments happen, right, because how we play, and I'll save this for another video, we always have an opportunity for success or failure in any dice roll that's made. So if you always have a chance to succeed or you always have a chance to fail, that always leads to dramatic or fun moments in the game. And so when we do an opposing dice roll and somebody makes a roll and they suddenly succeed or fail at a basic task, right, it can lead to grand consequences and great and funny storytelling. So that's one of the reasons I think that opposing dice rolls are critical in a role-playing game. I've found that letting players roll the dice and determine their fate, even for some mundane actions, really brings a lot of great situations into the game. And I'm going to recommend that game masters do that a lot. I hope you've kind of enjoyed this DM drive today. I think this is a great topic. I hope you guys learned something. It's always nice to spend my mornings with you guys. So salute to you. Have a great day gaming, you guys.